Tachanun. Technically speaking, we are continuing in the laws of tefillah because the priestly blessing is encircled by it, meaning it's in the middle of Shemona Esrei. And now we're going to the next part of the morning prayer service that has Tachanun in it. So technically, we're still talking about tefillah. However, in classic volumes of the Mishnah Berurah, this is classified in the table of contents as part of Nesias Kapayim, the laws of raising your hands. However, YouTube channels and Mishnah Berurahs don't have to be designed the same way, so I'm going to be saving this section of halacha here. We're doing 131 today. We're going to be saving it with the laws of tefillah, where we have been residing for quite some time, and we only have another 5 more before we reach the laws of Kriyas HaTorah. So, and when I say we only have 5 more, what I mean is that Kriyas HaTorah starts with 136. Okay, so we are almost there. So now we're going to talk about the laws of Nesias. We're done with the Nesias Kapayim. We're talking about Tachanun, and this is a summary of some of the laws of Tachanun. Okay, so let's talk about Tachanun for a second. What does Tachanun mean? So Tachanun is referring to supplication prayers that are being recited after the Shemona Esrei. Okay, and you've been standing here this whole time, listening very quietly and patiently to your Shemona Esrei to be repeated. And maybe, depending on where you've been davening, you've also heard Nesias Kapayim, heard the Berurah Kohanim. And now we're going to the end of the prayer service, and we're going to add in some supplications. Okay, so we're going to try to understand what these additional supplications are, where they come from, and why it was attached to the prayer service. So the first rule the Shulchan Aruch brings, okay, again, we're in Orach Chaim 131, we're in Halach Aleph. One may not speak between tefillah and the Tefillah Sapayim, between the Tachanun service, which is it's called the Tefillah Sapayim, because you put your head down like this. Okay? So, and if you have tefillin on that hand, then you go like this. Okay, if you're Ashkenazi. Okay, and our custom is to tilt to the left side, like you saw me do. Okay, the Ramah says there are those who say that you have to go to the right side. Okay, and our custom is to go to that side. Okay, when the Ramah, as you do that in the morning service, because you have tefillin on your left side, right? Normally over here you have your tefillin on, you wrapped around, so you don't want to do that. You said want to do this. And the reason why we don't lean on it is because the honor due to tefillin. And in the evening, meaning in the afternoon, when you don't have tefillin on your left hand, you can go ahead and tilt to your left. Next statement of the Ramah, after you do this falling on your side there, okay, you should lift up your head and say a few more supplications while being seated. And every single place will follow its own custom. And it's a simple and established custom to say at the end, Va'anachnu lo neda. We don't know. There's a statement at the end that we say. Then we go on to Chatzi Kaddish, right, the half Kaddish. You don't say those last 3 lines. We then recite Ashrei Lam Natseach, and then going from there. We'll talk about those things in the next Siman. We'll see how far we get today. And even on those days where we don't recite Tachanun, we still recite Lam Natseach, that prayer service in between Ashrei and Uval Tzion, except for Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah and Purim, and though an Erev Pesach, an Erev Yom Kippur, and Tisha B'Av. Okay, that's our custom. So those should be listed in your Siddur. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah jumps right in. What does it mean, don't speak? So he says, because by speaking, your supplications that you want to add to the end are not going to be as well received. Okay, that's assuming you went ahead and started chit-chatting about other unrelated things. Okay, but if it's just, little chit-chatty things, that's not so bad. And again, that's assuming you didn't do that during the repetition of the Amidah, because then you must be quiet and listen to the whole thing. And if I haven't repeated that to you enough times, you can go look at it again in Kuf Chaf Daled 124:4. Be quiet, right? That should be posted in every shul. Right? Do not speak at the moment when the Chazan is repeating the Amidah. And so too, to also speak during Kedusha, also bad, okay? And also when we take a break to say these additional supplications that we call Tachanun, okay? And we say that some of them, one paragraph starts with the words V'hu Rachum. So you can actually break in those places to respond to other prayers, okay? And that's even within any single line, okay? And it's also permitted to reply to the words Amen Yehi Shmi Rabba and everything Shibba Kedusha, right? So if you're saying Tachanun for an hour and the next meeting comes in and they start with Kedusha, it's all fine. Okay, so we say it goes between Tefillah and Tachanun. However, if you go ahead and you do speak, okay, you still have to do Tachanun, okay? So you shouldn't do it. If you do it, you still keep on doing it. It's also permitted to daven in one space and to feel supply in some other space, but don't take a long break in between, just as we've explained. Okay, so let's talk about Nefilas Apayim for a second. So the Mishnah is going to talk about this. When we fall, so the Ramah, there's a whole thing about when we fall on our face. So now we kind of understand why you shouldn't talk. Let's talk about the origin of this custom. In the old days, the custom was that they used to do it in a fashion where they would do a full prostration. It was called Kida, okay? And they would fall completely on their face all the way on the ground. They would not fully extend their arms and legs, okay? So it looks kind of like, if you ever do yoga, it kind of looks like a child's pose. So you come all the way down you bend your knees, come all the way down to the floor, plop the knees down, sit your rear end towards your heels, and extend your arms forward. That's the kida that we're referring to. The full hishtachavaya is where your arms are all the way out and your feet are all the way out. We don't do that. And that was not the practice either. Now, our current practice does not involve this falling on your face at all. Instead, it refers to the tilting of your head towards one side and covering your face. Okay, and that's the idea behind this. It was additional supplication above and beyond the Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei to be prayers said before the king, right? All the things that we think that we need, and our additional private ones that we should be embarrassed to kind of recite. We cover our faces towards the ground, and we don't just cover our faces. We also cover it with a garment. Some people use the talis. Okay, and not just your hand like this. Okay, you take a whole garment. Okay, and therefore we want to try to demonstrate that we're doing a falling, and the falling is to be on the garment. Okay, so if you're doing it, you should cover the garment over your arm, and then in between the arm and your face. Okay, some people put a jacket there, some people do something like that. Okay, but not directly on your forearm. Okay, so let's talk about falling on the left side. So what happens is that the reason why we say going to your left, we have said previously, okay, that when you pray, the Shekhinah stands to your right side, okay, because the verse says in Tehillim, Hashem tzilcha al yad yaminecha, Hashem's presence, his shadow should be felt on the right hand side. And you find that when you tilt to your left, you are looking at the right side of the Shekhinah, okay? And if you're going to your right, it's the opposite. And a person shouldn't think of a servant that goes to the opposite non-dominant side of their master. However, as we just learned in the Ramah, we go to the right side while wearing tefillin. Why? Because the Shekhinah is following the person, okay? And when you're tilting to your left side, the Shekhinah is on the right side. And when you turn to the right, the Shekhinah is on the left side. All right? And we're trying to imply the verse that the that your left hand should be under my head and your right arm caresses me. So the idea is that that's the thing that we do. Now we say that the Ashkenazi custom in the morning when you're wearing tefillin is to tilt to your right, and in the afternoon to tilt to your left. This is agreed upon. The Mishnah Berurah explains by the Taz, the Magen Avram, big poskim of the Ashkenazi world. One should not change from this custom and deviate from it. Okay, now let's talk about the Gra, says the Mishnah Berurah. So the Gra, who says that the main thing is to hold like the Mechaber, which is to always go to your left side. He's saying if you daven in a shul and they go like the Ramah and go to their right side, you cannot change that minhag in front of them because of lo tisgo to do. Okay? And if the Shliach Tzibur, who is standing in front of the Aron, it's more appropriate that he should tilt his head towards the facing toward the side opposite him of the face of the Aron Kodesh itself. Okay? And so when the Ramah says, and then towards the evening time, okay, which means towards that time, not literally at night, because we don't say in the Tefillas Payim at night. Yeah, during Mincha, we don't wear tefillin. That's when you go to the left. Okay. And and someone who puts on tefillin at Mincha, then he should go to his right. The Chai Adam says over here that if you wanted to go to your left in the afternoon while wearing tefillin, you could do that because there actually is no established minhag. The established minhag is only in the morning. So you can if you want to wear tefillin all day, you're not operating against the minhag. You can do that in the evening. Okay, and when the Ramah says to follow your local minhag, and the Mishnah says in our country the custom is to say Rachum Tachanun. Okay. Right, so we have an established text that we use. Okay, we also say Vanachan lo neda towards the end. And so since the prayers that have been recited can also be recited while praying seated, and while standing, and while falling on your face. Okay, we find that this was something that Moshe Rabbeinu himself did, because it says that he sat when he was on the mountain. I stood on the mountain, and I fell for you also on the mountain. So I did all these different positions. And since we have no other way to learn how to pray other than from what we see from Moshe Rabbeinu, we therefore recite it in all different ways. And that's why we say we don't know how to approach you, because we don't know if you're standing, sitting, or falling, because we saw all of these things even by Moshe Rabbeinu. And so that's why we say that. And that's how we try to get this accepted from you. That is halacha aleph. We will now look at halacha beis. Halacha beis is Tachanun, right? Falling on your side should be done seated and not standing, right? Okay, and the Ramah adds, and those who say that. Oh, question. Kind of a new context for the words "I fell for you." Ha! That's kind of funny. I was so busy praying that I fell for you. Yes. All right. So you have to be doing it seated, not standing. And the Ramah adds, to those who say that the Tefillas Payim is only where we should be done in a place where there is an aron. This is a big one. I've seen people get this wrong a lot. So this is an important halacha over here, and maybe I'll actually make a bigger deal out of it. You should only say in the Tefillas Payim where there's an aron with a Sefer Torah in it. Okay, but without those things, meaning neither the Torah nor the aron, right? Or only an aron and no Torah, right? If you have a Torah, you could do without the aron. Okay, so in that place you say Tachanun without covering your face, and that's our custom. And then he adds, and if you are sitting in the courtyard of the synagogue, which opens up to the shul, okay, or you're in the middle of the time period when the congregation is praying, that at that time, and even a single person at home should recite the Tefillas Payim. Okay, which means that it should be done at that same time. Okay, so meaning that's like we said originally by prayer. Now let's look at some of these things that we get in Shabbat. So let's talk about sitting down. So Beis Yosef says that the reason why you should say Techina sitting down is a statement of the Kabbalah. Okay. However, there is a rivash. He brings from a chuvas rivash that doesn't matter. Most people write that when you can't sit down, you can recite it standing and just cover your face with the garment, like I mentioned. And so therefore, if you finish your davening and you have to stand, there's no place to sit, and you have to stand where you are, and then everyone's trying to say Tachanun, okay? Then you should jump into Tachanun right then and there with them, okay? Right after the Chazar Shasas, because it sounds like you've been davening for a long time. You've gone through the quiet private Shemana Esrei, and then you went through the whole repetition, and then you just finished, and then you just say Tachanun with everybody, okay? So stand where you are, fall on your face, recite those prayers, okay? And you can even do this even if someone's standing behind you and saying Shemana Esrei, and we normally say you can't sit in front of them, okay? Even if they're like a full eye shot away from you, here you just can't go anywhere else. Then you can stand up and do Tachanun while standing, okay? So those are some situations where you can rely on this lenient opinion against the statement of the Shulchan Aruch. So one of the requirements is that you have to have the Aron in the Sefer Torah. So as I was pointing out to, does this mean you have to have one, the other, or both? Okay, so the Mishnah points out having the Aron is not the operational important thing. It's having the Sefer Torah there. That's the important thing. And the reason why is because we find that falling on the face was before the Aron Hashem, right? The Ark of the Covenant. Okay, because we find by Joshua's war at the city of Ai, and he fell on his face before the Ark of Hashem. If there's no Sefer Torah, but they have other Svarim there, then the Eliyah Rabbah and the Ivrei Chaim, they say you should not fall on your face, right? You should just say the Mizmor without the Nefillas Payim, and there are people who disagree with them. And when there's a Sefer Torah, everyone agrees that you fall on your face. You do the falling on your face, do the Tachanun like this. Okay, also it's the afternoon, you do this. I'm sorry, if it's the morning, you do this, and the other side, you do this. So the what's it called? So that you should do. So most people have the minhag, by the way, even though it's not stated in the Mishnah Berurah, to go ahead and do Nefillas Payim when there's svarim around. Okay, some people are more particular about this. Some people say that you should only what's the word? You should only rely on this if it's in like a base midrash or a place where someone has lots and lots of svarim, okay? But not someone who you shouldn't do it in front of like one book. Why do some lean on the arm for Tachanun in their offices where there is no Sefer Torah? No, that's what I'm saying. The Siddur is not enough. That's not enough. I've seen people make this mistake. I've seen it lots of times. If there's no Sefer Torah, there's no svarim, you shouldn't do it. Okay? What they're doing is wrong. That's the point that I'm making. Okay, so the covering the face is the way in which we do the Nefillas Payim. Not so we just keep calling it Nefillas Payim. We actually more correctly call it Tachanun nowadays. Okay, so then we ended off with Zerma by saying that the courtyard of the shul that's open towards the inside. So when you're davening in that courtyard that's open to the main sanctuary of the Beis Knesset, and you could see it all the way to the Aron, so then you should fall down on your face because you can see the Aron, and inside there's a Sefer Torah, which is not the same thing if you stand to the side of it and you can see him but not see the Aron itself. Okay, and so if you were at an opening that's in the west side of the shul, okay, and this courtyard extends all the way through there and off to the south side of the building, and you go off to the south side and daven there, and you don't see a Torah, then you don't need to fall on your face for this. And so too, if there is an opening to the shul that is closed, okay, so the doors are closed, and you're davening outside, you also don't need to do the falling on your face for Tachanun. And the Achronim write that if you are davening in the Ezras Nashim and you're inside the building, you also fall on your face because you can still see the Aron there. And we say that if a person's in a house, a person's sitting at home, he still needs to do Tachanun. So it doesn't matter how close you are to shul, you should still say Tachanun and still do the falling on your face if it has a Sefer Torah there. Okay. And he says this case is similar to what we talked about in Siman Nun Hey, when you're not at the shul, but you're going to daven and tend to attach to the shul. In halacha 20 over there, we say that's what you should do. However, that's assuming that there's no dirtiness, nothing dirty between you and getting to the shul. Okay, so you should recite Tachanun there. And that's assuming that the shul is also reciting Tachanun at the time. Otherwise, it implies that you could skip it. Let's see. Let's do one more halacha over here. Okay. Number 3. Tachanun is not recited at night. Okay. And in the early hours of the morning, okay, which is known as Ashmoras HaBoker, or actually, I'm sorry, he says Leili Ashmoros. There are sometimes people get up in the evening to recite prayers. You could do it then because it's close to daytime. So let's talk about which prayer services we're talking about. So there's no falling on your face at night because, again, the Beis Yosef quotes something al pi Kabbalah. Okay, and that's to recite the Mizmor of the Nefilas Apayim. Okay, you can recite it, but you don't do the falling on your face. Okay, so at night. So therefore, if mincha goes until late, you do not do Tachanun. Okay, and if you're in between Shkia and Tzeis HaKochavim, that's what's called Ben Hashmashos, you can still do Nefilas Apayim. And on days when we recite Avinu Malkeinu for mincha, you can skip the Avinu Malkeinu in order to do Nefilas Apayim while there's still daylight out. And so we say that if it's close to the daytime, the Eliyah Rabbah brings down to say that after midnight and later is when we do that. And these are the laws that are pertinent mostly to reciting slichos. Okay? And so therefore the Mishnah Berurah explains that the custom developed to drag out these services until they're almost daylight out. Okay? And then you could do the Tachanun service while it's daylight. But in Erev Rosh Hashanah, that doesn't make sense to do that because we don't do Tachanun in Erev Rosh Hashanah. So this is really referring to that type of rule. Okay. Let's see. Is this next one fast or really kind of long? All right. The next one is basically about certain places we don't recite Tachanun, but I think that's going to be a little bit long to get in over here. I think we'll finish this off next time. That's kind of my issue, is like going through all the little details. There's a lot of details, there's not a lot of meat and potatoes halacha. So just to kind of sort of summarize what we know about the Nefilas Apayim, it has to be done. You don't talk. You should do it right after Shemona Esrei, and you only do the Nefilas Apayim. You only fall on your face, which is tilting to the side when there's an aron around. But if you have svarim around like this, right, and then Beis Medrash, you can do it as well. But if you just have like one book in front of you, that doesn't count because the Achron basically says svarim. Okay. And if you can see the aron and there's a Sefer Torah in it, you should fall down for that. You should do the Nefilas Apayim for that. Anywhere in this shul, it counts, even if you can't absolutely see the aron, but you know the Sefer Torah is in the room, even if you're in the Ezra's Nashim. And so we'll get to the next few rules of the rest of this section are about days that you don't recite Tachanun, which is really it's probably one of the most difficult sections, and it's a lot of details that are super picky that we'll talk about. We'll save it for next time because it's all talking about lots of little detaily things that don't affect you on a regular basis. So thank you for joining our class today. If you try to find this class again, it will be listed in Laws of Tefillah, not Laws of Nesias Kapayim. And we will see you next time. Thanks for joining.